Hello learners, and welcome to today's lesson of functions and relationships, input and output values. Let's start off our lesson with a did you know? So, did you know that numbers are represented in an equation having a relationship? The variables in an equation or formula have a relationship. Often, the one variable depends on the other variable. During our lesson, we will see how these values work together to form a formula. So let's start off with what we are going to learn in this lesson. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to determine and identify the input values, the output values, and the rules for any functional relationship using flow diagrams, tables, and formulas and equations. Let's look at our concept map for this lesson. So we are focusing on functions and relationships, where the first concept that we are going to look at is the input values, where we are going to look at the flow diagrams and the tables. Then we are going to go and look at the output values, where we are going to again look at the flow diagrams and the tables. Then lastly, we are going to go and look at our formula and equations. So what should you know for this lesson? Well, you must know how to investigate and extend numerical patterns. You should also find the general rule for a given numerical. So these are the things that you should know. Let's put them into practice. So here we are given a pattern. So this pattern is 2, 5, and 8. And we are told, study the pattern and find the next 3 terms. Now, do you remember how to find the next 3 terms? Well, firstly, we must see what the rule is, or how we move from the first term to the second term and the second term to the third term. So remember, this is the first term, this is the second term, and this, of course, is the third term. And as we can see how this pattern moves along, we are now adding 3 here from the first term to the second term, yes, and we are again adding 3 from the first term, from the second term to the third term. So what are going to be the next 3 terms? Well, we are just going to continue and add 3. So for the next term, which is the fourth term, we are going to have 11. Then we are going to add 3 again so that we can have our 14. And we are going to add 3 again, which is going to give us our 17. And that is going to be the next 3 terms. Then we are going to use the same pattern to now fill in the table. So already we have found the fourth term, which is 11, and the fifth term, which is 14. Now here we are looking for the 15th term. Does this mean we are going to add 3s right up until we get to the 15th term? No. We are going to use our rule. So for us to find the 15th term, we need the algebraic rule. Let's quickly find that rule. We know that to find the rule, we are going to use the first term or the second term or the third term, but any 2 of these terms we can use to find that rule. So firstly, we know that we are going to take the common difference, which is 3. We're going to multiply it by the term number, which is n, and we are going to add or subtract any constant or a constant that is going to work hand in hand with our rule. So taking into consideration our first term, we're going to multiply 3 with 1 because we are working with the first term. We're going to add or subtract a certain constant so that we can get to our first term, which is 2. So here we are going to say 3 multiplied by 1, which is 3. We subtract 1, we are going to get 2. If we take any other term, I'm going to take the third term. We're going to say 3 multiplied by 3, which is 9. And what do we need to add or subtract to get to that second term? The third term. So our third term here is 8. So we are going to say 3 multiplied by 3, which is 9. And for us to get to 8, we are going to subtract 1. What does this mean for our rule for this pattern? Our rule here is Tn is equals to that constant difference multiplied by the term number, and we just subtract 1. Now that is going to help us find our 15th term. So we are going to say 3 multiplied by 15, that is 45. When we subtract 1, that's going to give us 44. Do you think you can find it for the 80th term? Of course you can. So here we are going to say 3 multiplied by 80, which is 240. And then when we subtract 1, we are going to get 239. And that is going to be now the 80th term. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question here also gives us another pattern. We have to find the next 3 terms. So we have 7, 5, and 3. So how are we moving from term 1 to term 2 and from term 2 to term 3? Are you seeing that we are subtracting by 2? Yes, we are. So for us to find the next 3 terms, we just need to continue subtracting by 2. So from the 3, when we subtract by 2, we are going to get a negative 1. Then again, we subtract by 2, we are going to get a negative, that is a mistake. Actually, from 3, when we subtract by 2, we are going to get to 1. So 3 minus 2 is 1, of course. Then from 1, we are going to subtract by 2. We are going to get to negative 1. And then from negative 1, we are going to subtract 2 again and get to negative 3. So those are the next 3 terms. And when we use this table now to fill in, or we use this pattern to fill in the table, we can see that our 4th term there is 1. Our 5th term is negative 1. And of course, for us to find the 15th term and the 20th term, we need to find our rule. Now, our rule is our constant difference, which is negative 2, multiplied by the term number, and we are going to add or subtract a constant. So we need to find that constant. So using the first term, negative 2 multiplied by 1, we need to add or subtract something to get an answer of 7. So we got there an answer of, or we should get an answer of 7. So if we say negative 2 multiplied by 1, that is a negative 2. And then how are we going to move from negative 2 to 7? Yes, it is going to be an addition of 9. Let's find another term and see if that same rule applies. So we are going to take a negative 2 and multiply it by 2 because we are working with the second term. And of course, our second term is 5. So when we say negative 2 multiplied by 2, that is a negative 4. So how do we move from negative 4 to a positive 5? Yes, again, we are going to add our 9. So what is our rule going to be here? Our rule is going to be that we are going to multiply our term number with negative 2, which is the constant difference. Then from there, we are going to add 9. Now, can we do the same for the 15th term and for the 20th term? Well, what is then a negative 2 multiplied by 15? That, of course, is a negative 30. And when we add 9 onto that negative 30, our answer is going to be a negative 21. And what about the 20th term? Well, when we multiply a 20 by negative 2 and we add 9, that answer is, do you think you have it? Of course, that is going to be your negative 31. So that is going to be our negative 31. Why? Because negative 2 multiplied by 20 is a negative 40. And when we add 9 to that, that is going to be a negative 31. Let's look at the keywords that we are going to be using for this lesson. So we are going to work with equation, which is 2 expressions that are equal to each other. So for example, we have a 2y as an expression and 3x minus 7 as an expression. Together they form an equation. Then we have a formula, which is a mathematical relationship or rule expressed in symbols. So for example, y is equals to 2x plus 3 would be an example of our formula. Next, we have our input values. That is the value that goes into an equation to produce a result. So, for example, in the equation y is equals to 2x plus 8, the x is the input. If x is equals to 3, then the 3 will be the input value. And then when we look at the output values, the result from an input value being inserted in an equation. So for example, in the equation y is equals to 2x plus 8, the y is the output. So if x is equals to 3, then when we substitute that x, we will have y is equals to 2 multiplied by 3 plus 8 is equals to 14, which means 14 will be the output value, which is the result that we get from inserting that input value. Let's quickly go to an ad break and then we'll see you just now.